Welcome to Metro Talk. I'm Tim Albright in for Kent Shuffle. With us this week is Pat Gowan. Pat's one of the editors of the Post-Dispatch. Hello, Pat.
Hi, Tim.
Also with us is Jim Schrader, the publisher of the Telegraph.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
Great.
Jim, Governor Rod Blagojevich has been sentenced to 14 years of prison.
What?
Yes.
I hadn't heard about that.
Yes, he was sentenced.
Did that just happen?
Oh, no. This is an old story.
Okay.
But no, the former governor has officially been sentenced to 14 years. Is 14 years enough? Are we happy with that? Has justice been served?
I don't know in the case of a white-collar crime if prison ever completely serves the crime. In this particular case, it was really kind of the only option in that there was really no money that changed hands. So it wasn't something where the former governor could pay restitution to someone because he had collected a bunch of money in ill-gotten gains, which is what happens so many times in white-collar crimes. When Tony Rezko was sentenced to 10.5 years, I think the shot kind of went out to everybody there that, okay, Blagojevich will get at least 10.5. The prosecution asked for 15 to 20. Some say that Blagojevich's last-minute mea culpa, where he finally decided to admit that he did wrong and take some of the blame, may have shaved a year or two off of Judge James Nagel's sentencing. 14 years, I think, probably sends a message to some of the other politicians in the state of Illinois that if especially the federal government finds out that things are not going absolutely correctly up to snuff, that they will prosecute and they will go after many years in prison. The federal guidelines is Blagojevich has to serve about 85% of the term, which is approximately 12 years. If you do it mathematically, it's 11.9 years. So I guess it'd be 67 when he gets out of prison. He's also got, I think, 3 years probation after that, and he has to pay a $20,000 fine. And to most people, $20,000 fine, that doesn't seem like much, but here's a guy who claims to be broke, said he spent all of his money on defense trial, and his home is up for sale. So he has no visible means of support. He certainly didn't make any money off of his book deal, which quickly ended up in the bargain bin at the dollar store because nobody bought that book either. So I think 14 years is probably just. You would like to see him have to do some type of public service or something like that as well. But the fact that the message has been sent out that if we catch you in the state of Illinois, we will prosecute and we will go for lengthy sentences, I think probably sends the good message. And Blagojevich's career is ruined, and he can never hold public office, elected office again in the state of Illinois, so I think he'll have a lot of time to think about what he did.
Pat, is 14 years long enough?
Well, I don't think it's my place to say what was appropriate, but I can put it in some context. When I was a reasonably young reporter covering criminal courts in Illinois, the statutory minimum for murder was 20 years. And a number of people got 20 years. And these were in the days when you got a day off your prison sentence for every day of good behavior in prison. So 20 years was really 10, so you pretty much walked after 10 years on a murder case that did not have other aggravating circumstances. It's a lot higher than that now, but back then that was the sentence, and far less than the approximately 12 years that Blagojevich is going to serve this 14-year term. If you put this in the perspective of other governors, because Illinois rather uniquely has a trackable history of governors going to prison. You look at Otto Kerner, he benefited in racetrack stock. In the 1960s, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison. Sentenced to 3 years in prison. He actually served 7 months. He was released early because of health issues. Dan Walker was governor, but the crimes for which he went to prison had nothing to do with being governor. He profited from a savings and loan fraud, was sentenced to 7 years in prison, and he served actually 18 months. George Ryan had been governor, but went to prison and is still in prison for crimes committed not as governor, but as Secretary of State. And in Ryan's case, he was convicted and sentenced to 6.5 years in prison. He will serve about 5 years and 8 months under the federal guidelines before he is released in 2013. Now we get to Blagojevich. Sentenced to 14 years, which is less than the other 4 put together, but will actually serve about 12 years, which is about 4 years more than the other 3 put together. And he didn't get anything.
Yeah.
I mean, what he did may very well be egregious and be a crime, and maybe he's trying like mad to profit, maybe he was too dumb to profit, although I think part of it was that the feds pulled the plug early before he had a chance to really sell that Senate seat and create all kinds of constitutional issues. I guess they cut him short before he could collect. We didn't collect. He would serve 12 years. I don't know if that's out of sync. Going way back, Orville Hodge from Grant City, a state auditor in the 50s, convicted with his hand in the till to the tune of about $1.5 million, $1956. It's a whole lot of money now. He ended up serving about 6.5 years. So most of these people, at the most, were getting around half or a little more of what Blagojevich got. So if that's fair, it certainly does send a message to other politicians that that this is taken seriously. You have to wonder how much Blagojevich's own conduct, challenging the prosecutor to be a man and claiming on every talk show that would have him, which is pretty much all the national talk shows, that he was innocent and he was going to prove that he was innocent and so forth. I did think it was instructive when I mentioned in my column last week too that when Blagojevich did not testify in his first trial, he was only convicted of 1 count, and when he did testify in his second trial, he was convicted of 17 counts. So maybe he's not quite the pitch man that he thinks himself to be. And final thought, and I think this is interesting, when he gets out of prison, he'll be about 4 or 5 years younger than George Ryan was going in.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to check out the music program with Dr. Teresa Crane.
Have you always wanted to learn how to play the piano? Maybe you wanted to learn Beethoven's Für Elise. Or maybe you like a more popular style like Jim Brickman. Or maybe you like jazzy blues. You can learn all this and more right here at Lewis and Clark Community College.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
When you open a book, you can explore new lands, make new friends, and discover new adventures. There are amazing possibilities when you open your mind to reading. Explore new worlds. Read.
60-inch screen, high definition. Football season is coming up. You can watch it right here. What do you think?
I'll take it.
Huh? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
You're right. I don't need it.
Welcome back to Metro Talk. Pat, Illinois Attorney General Lisa Madigan is trying to keep Ameren, the utility, involved in this rate case. Ameren originally asked for a $60 million rate increase. They later reduced that down to $39 million. However, if the Illinois Commerce Commission sides with this the administrative law judge, Ameren could actually face a $41 million rate reduction. The opposite of, I guess, what they were trying to go for. Should Ameren be allowed to withdraw from this case altogether?
Well, they're trying to withdraw, and they pretty effectively have withdrawn, I guess, partly for a reason that's unrelated to these rates. And whether it's fair or not, I guess is a good question. Illinois passed, over the veto of Governor Pat Quinn, legislation enabling the smart grid approach to electric distribution. I'm not a smart enough grid myself to quite understand the smart grid, but I've read a little bit about it, and I guess it really does bring the distribution of electricity in the 21st century, and even people who might be inclined to be critical of the rate increases and utility profits, I think are fairly well aligned that this may be a very good thing in the long run for the stability of the electric system as we know it. With that comes a new rate structure. Ameren is now seeking to withdraw from the rate increase that could turn into a rate decrease for them, claiming that it's irrelevant because the smart grid legislation is passed during the course of these proceedings, and that will change the methodology of the rate setting, so that makes the request for a rate increase irrelevant. Now, I suppose you could argue the other side and say, well, if smart grid makes that irrelevant, then let's just let the rate cut stand as a rate cut, as proposed by the administrative law judge, and let that one become irrelevant too. So whether Ameren would have claimed irrelevancy had they won an increase instead of suffered a potential decrease in rates, I don't know. And you've got to be a genius to understand this stuff. When they go in for a rate increase, the utility wants the moon, and the Citizens Utility Board, a product of Pat Quinn, by the way, wants to hold them down as low as possible. My guess as an ordinary ratepayer is that they never need as much money as they claim, but it may not be as overstated as CUB claims, and that they end up somewhere in the middle. And so I don't claim to have a very intelligent opinion about that part of it, but this is what they're trying to do, and in the end, I'm sure the ratepayers are going to pay more money because ultimately that seems to be what happens every time.
Well, one of the things that the smart grid legislation did was it guarantees rate increases for 10 years to Ameren. No review, no CUB sign off, no legislative sign off, nothing. There will be a rate increase every year for 10 years.
But they are bound to do certain things.
And they are bound to do certain things. What we, outside the electrical industry would call, capital improvements, they're going to have to install new equipment, and they're going to have to install so-called smart meters on every home. So there's a lot of investment there. Of course, Ameren has that problem of being a private company, for-profit company, being regulated by the government, so everything they do has to be approved by some governmental agency. I guess a rhetorical answer to Pat's question, had they been granted the increase that they'd asked for, would they want to be withdrawing from the case? I would say probably not. Yeah. That would be like saying, I lost at the slot machine, so let me give you some more money. I won the slot machine, and well, I'll keep that, and I'll take the extras over here too. It bothers me. I think if there's a television program on now called Pawn Stars, and people come in and they bring things and they try to sell them to the operator for a certain price. And they do little vignettes ahead of time, and they'll go in and they'll say, well, I'm going to ask $3,000, but I'd really probably take $200. That reminds me of the way Ameren asks for rates. If you look back the last 4 or 5 years, they go in asking for 100 and they settle for 55, or they go in and ask for 60 and they'll settle for 40. It's almost like we're buying a used car or trading horses here. You would hope that they would go in and say, this is what we need, folks. We've done the math, and this is really what we need to sustain ourselves and to sustain some type of return to our investors. But instead, it becomes the flim-flam game with the smoke and mirrors. It will be interesting to see if they are allowed to withdraw from this case. Now, it has proceeded this far, and it's like saying, well, I didn't know I'd get a light sentence if I pled guilty. I pled not guilty, so maybe I can change my plea at this late date after the judge has basically already expressed an opinion. I don't know if they can withdraw from it or not, but it seems to me, or my belief is, if we look back over the several years and some of the record profits, quarter after quarter after quarter, that Ameren has been making, that we don't have to be concerned about them pleading poverty and going out of business. It may cut into what they would like to have as their profits. But I suspect we're not going to hear we can't deliver power anymore or generate power anymore because we don't have enough money to operate.
Jim, Illinois now has a vendor payment program in place. This is a program that says that any vendor in the state of Illinois can get paid up to 90% of what they're owed. Two questions here. First question is this a good idea? Second question is, where did we magically come up with the money to pay 90% of our bills?
Well, actually, the state is not paying 90% of the bills. The state is contracting with a company that basically absorbs the debt to vendors from the state of Illinois. Interestingly enough, the founder of this vendor payment program made his fortune in the payday loan business, where you go in and you say, I have a job and here's my check stub, and in 2 weeks I'll have another check, so loan me some money based upon that. What it does is this company will pay the vendor up to 90%, sometimes 100% of what the state owes them. They then take 10% of that amount and put it into a special fund into the state. And when the state repays the full amount to the pay program company, the state gets to keep, or excuse me, the 10% then goes back to the vendor company. And for every month that the state is late, there's a 1% interest penalty from the state that is withdrawn from the 10%. So basically what we've done is we have refinanced our vendor debt because we can't make our bills, and we are getting payday loans. Someone is satisfying the little vendors, the little pharmacies and the little nursing homes and the little Medicaid providers, the small doctors or their small hospitals. They are being made whole or almost whole, at least a better percentage than they were getting from the state up front. And the finance company is waiting for the state to reimburse them with a penalty of 12% interest, 1% per month, 12% annually, which will add up real quick. As we talked about on this program before, Pat and I said, we can't understand why they didn't consolidate all of the state's debt. You could borrow money at 5 or 6%, make all of those vendors whole, which is going to be a lot less expensive as the 1% a month or 12%. The state legislature didn't see fit to do that, so we are now in the pockets of loan sharks. And I don't mean loan sharks necessarily negatively here. It gets the state somewhat out of a pickle short term. It keeps the vendors from running to the legislators and screaming for money or going out of business. The small vendor is made whole, but the state is still on the hook for the cash at a higher interest rate than they would have been before.
Pat, is
higher rate than if they'd refinanced it in a whole, which
Yes.
which we talked about back in the day, and that did seem to make a lot of sense at the time. Not more than they're paying now, however, because now they're paying that interest to the vendor, not to the payday loan people. So in the end, it's supposed to be revenue neutral, and it appears that it probably will be. So putting this in practice, Jim is the state and I'm the widget company, and he owes me $100. And eventually he will pay me, and he'll pay me with 1% interest a month when he gets around to paying, however much that is. Now, maybe I want to regard it as an investment of my $100. I'm making 1%, so that's a good thing, and maybe I'm fine with that. But maybe I need the cash right now. I can't make my payroll. $110 down the line is not the same thing as having $90 in my pocket right now. So I take your $90, I get 90% of what's owed. When they finally get around to making the payment to me, I should get the other $10. And then they pay the interest not to me but to you. So I end up with the whole amount. I've carried them maybe for 10% of it for a while, but I haven't carried them for 100% of it. I presume the 10% escrow fund is to guarantee that the payday loan company does not get stiffed by the state. That's the payday loan company's way of being sure they get their money out of it. This is by a guy who runs a payday loan company, and while the interest rate is not as attractive as it might have been if they'd done the original deal that we talked about a year or two ago, I never had a payday loan, but I don't think I can get one for 1% a month. So this shows that they got the buying power of the state of Illinois. I mean, these are businesses that are famous for charging extremely high rates. And this is not a terribly high rate. You know, if you've got a credit card, now you don't have the buying power of the state, but if you've got a credit card for 12% a year, that's a pretty good credit card. And so it looks like it's win-win-win for everybody, which is the only thing that makes me nervous about it. It's that the things that look like they're too good to be true may be, but this has been going on for a while. It's not a brand new program. It's worked so far, so it's pretty innovative. I tip my hat to that.
It's probably a smart idea that the vendor is taking a lower rate because the state keeps threatening to shut down the payday loan organizations in the state.
Well,
so he knew he couldn't get away with that rate and didn't want to draw attention to
Well,
it.
and I'm presuming what they're saying is this: the state is a much less risky borrower than the people they normally deal with.
You just stick with that story.
No one really doubts that at some point in time you're going to get your money, which may not be the case depending upon who you loan to on the street. And the volume, you're talking about 1% on a rather huge volume potentially, so they probably make up money that way too.
Okay, on that, we'll take a break. We'll be right back after this.
Hello and welcome to the Lewis and Clark Minute. Today we're going to check out the radio broadcasting program in WLCA with Mike Lemons.
Have you ever listened to your favorite radio station or your favorite disc jockey and say, you know, I could do that? Or maybe you're the type of person who says, I could never do something like that. Well, with the help of first-year mass comm student John, we're going to show you just how easy it is. Each voice intro starts with talking about the band that just played, and we add a station identifier. Next, you want to offer some information that may be of interest to your audience. And finally, tell the listeners what the next song is, who sings it, followed by another station identifier. John will do one live now.
Silver Sun Pickup Substitution on WLCA. The Big Pink released their debut album called A Brief History of Love. The single is off that album. It's The Big Pink with Dominoes. It's on College Radio's Best 89.9.
This has been your Lewis and Clark Minute.
What's that? I don't know. Something I kind of made. Ooh, what's it do?
What do I do? Well, thanks for asking. I ring my bell and I like to dance. What do I do? Well, thanks for asking.
Ow! Yeah, it still needs a little work.
Anything's possible. Keep thinking. Get started on your own inventions or just play some games at inventnow.org.
Sounds like you could use some Van Gogurt. It's fortified with arts-rich nutrients to improve your math and reading skills. Catch!
Van Gogurt, thanks. So what's the deal with your ear?
Always with the ear, huh?
Feed your kids the arts. For 10 simple ways to learn how, visit AmericansForTheArts.org.
Welcome back to Metro Talk. Pat, State Representative Bill Mitchell of Forsyth, says that Cook County should secede from Illinois and make its own state. I guess, Chicagoland or what have you. Governor Quinn and Senator Dick Durbin both say that's a bad idea. In all seriousness, would there be any benefits to the folks up north seceding for them, or benefits from us downstaters?
It's been talked about before. 1861, Little Egypt and Southern Illinois wanted to secede from Illinois because they wanted to go with the South in the Civil War. 1925, I think Cook County tried to secede and it didn't get very far. I think probably for Representative Mitchell's party, he's a Republican, that this would be an advantage. I think they're looking at a Democrat governor, they're looking at Democrat-controlled House and Senate, and houses that long have been. They're looking at Cook County as the source of Democrat votes, and they're frustrated. And maybe they're frustrated at the point of saying, well, we ought to secede. You know, Illinois is the last state that does not have some form of concealed firearm carry. There's no question in my mind that if it weren't for Cook County, the rest of Illinois would be in support of having it. I think Illinois is different from Cook County. The bulk of Illinois in land area is different from Cook County in a lot of things, whether it's gun control or abortion, taxation, welfare issues. There's going to be a lot of differences politically, and there would be in any state. You know, we're a very diverse state. It just so happens that part of our diversity is located in northeastern part of the state. You know, Interstate 80 crosses Illinois at Joliet, which is kind of the southern reaches of the Chicago area, and 2/3 of the population of Illinois lives north of Interstate 80. I mean, the grand part of the population. So I can see politically why you might want to do this. Now, it would be virtually impossible to accomplish. You have to have a referendum. Congress has got to sign off on it. You know, we haven't had anybody secede from the Union in a long time. And it's not going to happen now. He's making a point, I guess, but the point doesn't lead anywhere. It's not going to change anybody's political bent. And I presume that that's what's driving him. He's got one co-sponsor. It's one of those things that, unfortunately for him, I know nothing of Representative Mitchell, but this is the kind of thing that could get you labeled a kook. I don't know if he's already a kook. I don't know if he's a kook at all. But you got to be careful when you sponsor this kind of thing, because people kind of snicker at you, and they might for the rest of his legislative career.
Yeah, it's something you joke about, but it's really it is not going to have any legs. For one thing, I don't think, you know, just on physically on the dollars and cents side, it would work. As we all talk about many times, for example, we don't get all of the road funds back from the gasoline taxes in downstate. A portion of that is kept in Chicago because they don't generate enough to take care of their own roads. They have toll roads, so on and so forth. A lot of the tax monies that are paid by residents south of Joliet go back to Chicago. There was a big hoopla last year about continuing to fund the Chicago Transit Authority and how they're going to continue to keep everything going in Chicago. So if Chicago were to secede, first thing they're going to have to do is come up with a big pot of money. And if they thought their taxes were high before, they're going to be a lot higher now. It sounds like something that we downstaters would like to happen, but in reality, it's just not going to happen
I just
ever.
had a thought. If you draw the line far enough south to pick up Kankakee, we could live in a state that never had a governor go to prison.
There we go.
All right. On that, we're going to say goodbye. With us this week has been Jim Schrader from the Telegraph, publisher, and Pat Gowan from the Post-Dispatch. I'm Tim Albright, and Kent Shuffle should be back next week. Thank you.